All right, it works. Well, thanks everybody. My name is Peter Rojas. I'm a partner at BetaWorks, and my colleague. Okay, you stand over here to my right.
I'm Matt Hartman. Also work on the investment team at BetaWorks.
And we actually kind of came up with the idea for BotCamp. I joined BetaWorks about a year ago, about 14 months ago, and from when I joined, Matt and I have been having sort of an ongoing conversation about notifications, messaging platforms, conversational interfaces, and I kind of joke, but we'd had this conversation I think almost every single day where we would go back and forth about where are the opportunities, who's building really interesting things here, and BetaWorks has been sort of focusing on the future of messaging and conversation and notifications. Actually, for a while, you can look at the evolution of this within BetaWorks. Originally a product called HomeScreen, which I think you can talk a bit about.
Yeah. So John had done a study on what apps were on people's home screens. We then built a product called HomeScreen, and one of the things we noticed very quickly was that even though we tracked 50,000 unique apps on people's home screens, only 900 of them appear on more than one person's screen. So only 900 more on at least two people's screens. So very hard to get distribution, and that was something that had changed.
Yeah, it was creating this situation where people were building interesting new mobile products, but finding it very challenging to acquire new users and get people to use them and to reach any sort of meaningful scale. We did an investment about a year ago in a company called Howdy, which builds something called BotKit, which is an SDK for creating bots, originally for the Slack platform, but has since expanded to Facebook Messenger and to Microsoft's bot platform. Then we had a company built internally at BetaWorks called Dexter, which I think you talk a bit about.
Yeah, a bot building platform itself, and then all of this was sort of leading up to this notion that notification layer was becoming extremely important, which then led us to Notification Summit.
Yeah, so in October of last year, we held a Notification Summit at BetaWorks where we started to look at as apps start to not necessarily fade into the background, but become not necessarily the primary way that a lot of people interact with their devices, what's a natural extension of that? And so we ended up having a great day where we brought together a lot of people to talk about this. And
I would say, so all of that led up to, we built a product on top of Dexter. John built it called Botwick, starting to experiment around what different chat interfaces made sense, what different interactions made sense. We released the Poncho messaging app on Facebook, which was featured by Facebook, and we learned a lot from that. And then that kind of leads us up till the beginning of the summer when we launched BotCamp.
Yeah, and again, it was sort of the culmination of a lot of thinking and exploration around the future of notifications, future of messaging platforms, and future of conversational interfaces. And so with BotCamp, it was something that we came up with in March, as John mentioned earlier, and spun up actually relatively quickly. We were able to get, I think overall about 450 inquiries came through, 346 actual valid applications, and then we winnowed that down to 8 startups. And because it was a accelerator focused on bots, of course we had to have a bot through which you could do your application to the program. And this is an example of one of the interesting conversations that someone applying had with CampBot, which was the bot through which you made your application. I think we just cut this guy a check. I don't think we even put him through the program. So BotCamp, it was 12 weeks of product development, work on branding. I think every company in the program went through a branding exercise with BetaWorks' team there. Focus on user acquisition, data science, fundraising, a lot of stress, and a lot of late nights. And so we've seen some of this before. We had an amazing set of investor partners, brand partners, and platform partners and mentors who came in and worked with the teams and really helped them understand the nuances of the platforms that they're building for, to really think about how to raise money in this environment, to think about how do you develop the product. We had a really amazing group of people that came through. And so since we had this huge number of companies that applied, we actually got a lot of interesting data around what kinds of bots people want to build for. And so you can see here the different categories that we were able to break down the applicants to. Enterprise being 15%, the biggest number there. But we saw people building for real estate, for fitness, for dating, for travel, education, food, really a pretty wide spectrum of different categories and verticals. And it gave us a really good understanding of what sorts of challenges a lot of these companies were facing in trying to build interesting products. We saw a lot of similar products that got built, and we saw also sort of the limits of some of these categories, what kind of innovative quality product you could build there. And then we also got a lot of information around what kinds of messaging platforms the applicants were building for. Facebook Messenger being the most popular, SMS actually being the second most popular, and a lot of applicants supported multiple platforms, which is not surprising. And then you can see from the 8 companies that we have in BotCamp, the different platforms that they themselves support. So, and again, many of the BotCamp companies offer their bot on multiple platforms, but Slack being the most popular, and then Facebook Messenger being the second most popular. We did have 35 applicants to BotCamp who built a native iOS app, but as it turns out, only one of the BotCamp companies is doing that.
So I'll talk for a moment about what we've learned. So I would put these in 2 broad categories: design and discovery. And we'll talk about this throughout the day, so I'm not going to focus too deeply on it. But on the user interface side, Slack has almost an infinite number of emojis you can use. Kik Messenger and Facebook let you ship a button itself and communicate via text. And Telegram lets you ship an entire keyboard. So very different in terms of how each of the platforms is structured. On the natural language processing side, companies like Facebook and a bunch of platforms have their own native natural language processing. It turns out that nobody used that. So what was interesting was people either went to the GUI buttons or very specific text keywords, or they built their own natural language themselves. And that's really because it's a combination of, it's a black box from the developer's perspective, and the horizontal NLP isn't, it needs to be trained so specifically that you might as well kind of roll your own. On the discovery side, it's super early days, but we can learn from how each of the platforms is enabling discovery. Slack lets you invite bots into group chat, but not into direct messages, whereas Kik solves a privacy problem in a very specific way and lets bots come into a direct message. Telegram lets you get an image from a bot and send it to multiple friends in individual messages, almost like Snapchat. And then a number of the platforms have bot stores. Facebook notably doesn't, but they do feature some bots. They just recently also launched the ability to do paid advertisements that drop you directly into a bot. So I want to just take the last couple minutes and put this into a bit of a broader context. We've been surrounded for the last 3 months by companies that are building these messenger-first products. And it's really about something that's a little bit bigger than that, and it's about the way that we are changing how inputs and outputs work. It's almost the way that we're talking to computers is changing. And if we think about that in the context of when we got mobile and we got internet in our pocket, we had lower friction on going to websites, sharing things like location. In social, we had lower friction on sharing with friends, and so that gave rise to the news feed. It changed how discovery worked. Chat is really the first time that we've been able to atomize that data collection, where you can ask a very specific question, the exact question you want to ask, to the user in the context that they want it, giving them the UI elements that make it easiest for them to respond. And conversely, it's the first time that users can ask those types of questions of the services that they're working with. And this is only going to get more important and change further. So as voice rises, the input mechanisms get even faster. Talking is faster than texting. Audio means that we'll be able to consume a lot of this data in places that don't have screens. And then if you kind of fast forward to a world where we have mixed reality and virtual reality, if we all have contact lenses in here that add an additional layer of augmented reality, there might be something up here on the podium that tells you the agenda. And that's actually a visual interface delivered to you only based on the fact that you are here and looking at it, and then it disappears otherwise. So all of these companies are navigating the very earliest stages of really a fundamental shift in the way that we talk to computers. So thank you all so much for coming and sharing your day with us, and we're excited to introduce you to these companies.